So today I'll be continuing with my college football game by game prediction and roster discussion videos. Today I'll be doing the Arizona State Sun Devils. So in Kenny Dillingham's first full recruiting class in 2024, Arizona State had the 54th ranked recruiting class in the country. And after having the good year in 2025, the recruiting still wasn't great, but it did improve. They had the 45th ranked recruiting class, but the recruiting class only had two four-star players and it didn't have any five-star players. So starting on the offensive side of the roster, Arizona State averaged 29.7 points per game last year, and I think their offense will be solid again. So at quarterback, they're in good shape. Sam Levitt, really out of nowhere, had a good year last year. He played in 13 games. He missed one game because of an injury, but he had last year 2,885 yards passing and 24 touchdown passes and only six interceptions. And he completed 61.7% of his passes and averaged an impressive 8.2 yards per throw. And he also had 443 yards rushing and five rushing touchdowns on 110 carries, averaging 4 yards a carry. And at wide receiver, Jordan Tyson comes back and he's expected to be a first or second round pick in the next NFL draft. He missed their conference championship game and college football playoff game because of an injury, but in the 12 regular season games, he had 75 catches for 1,101 yards and 10 touchdowns, averaging 14 point 7 a catch. And losing Scatterbo, though, is a big loss for them at wide receiver. He was their second best pass catcher last season. And at running back, they're not replacing Cameron Scatterbo. But they did bring in a transfer running back from Army that will probably take Scatterbo's place as the starting running back. Kenye Ado is his name. Last year he had 1,117 rushing yards on 179 carries and 10 rushing touchdowns, averaging 6.2 a carry. And their offensive line could be one of the best in the country. It was really good last year, and they returned 4 out of 5 starters. They return at right guard Kyle Scott, who played and started 13 games last season, and he was great in pass protection. And they've got left tackle Josh Atkins coming back, who allowed 2 sacks only and only 20 total quarterback pressures. And they've got at right tackle Max Henniker, who did allow the most sacks on the team with three, but that was still pretty good. And they've got Ben Coleman coming back at center, one of the best in the country. He didn't allow a sack all season and only allowed 4 quarterback pressures. The left guard is the only spot that they won't have a starter coming back. So on the defensive side, they were pretty good here last year, giving up on average 20.5 points per game, and I think they could possibly even be a little bit better than that this year. Their run defense was a whole lot better than their pass defense was last year, and I think they're going to be good against the run again, and probably a little bit better against the pass than they were last year. So on the defensive line, they returned 3 out of 4 starters. They've got Clayton Smith coming back, who was their best defensive lineman, one of the best defensive linemen in the country. He had last year 33 tackles and 4.5 sacks and 33 total quarterback pressures and 4 pass breakups and a forced fumble and a fumble recovery. And they've got CJ Fight coming back, who had last year 30 tackles and 2 sacks and 4 total pressures and a fumble recovery for a touchdown. And they've got Prince Dorba coming back, who has played in 17 games the last 2 years with Arizona State and has a total of 42 tackles and 9 sacks and 19 total pressures and 2 pass breakups. And then at linebacker, they returned Jordan Crook and Kayshawn Elliott, who were good players. So Crook had last year in 11 games 57 tackles and 2 pass breakups and an interception. And then Elliott played and started 13 games last year and had 65 tackles and 2 sacks and 2 pass breakups and an interception and 4 total pressures. And then at cornerback, they returned both starting corners, Keith Abney and Javon Robinson. So Abney last year had 52 tackles and 9 pass breakups and 3 interceptions. And Robinson had 43 tackles and 4 pass breakups and 3 interceptions and uh, a forced fumble. And then at safety, they do lose their best player there, Shamari Simmons, who's off to the NFL. But the other 2 starting safeties are back of Xavier Alford and Miles Rouser. Alford had last year 85 tackles and 5 pass breakups and 2 interceptions, and Rouser had 98 tackles and 5 pass breakups and a sack and 3 total pressures. So now for the game by game predictions. Starting with Northern Arizona, this will be like a name your score kind of game for Arizona State. They'll score a ton of points and they'll probably shut out Northern Arizona, and their second string will be playing the whole second half. And now on the road at Mississippi State. So Arizona State is a much better team than Mississippi State is. But me being an Ole Miss fan, I will say that those at cowbells over at Mississippi State can be very loud and annoying. I've watched the Egg Bowl on TV many times when it's been played in Starkville, and I've heard them. That's why I could never go watch an Egg Bowl in Starkville, because I couldn't stand the sound of those cowbells. But Arizona State is a much more experienced team than Mississippi State is, and I think they're a much better coach team. So even though I think this might be pretty close, I think Arizona State gets the win. And now at Texas State, even though this game was close last year when they played, I think Arizona State will blow out Texas State this time. And now on the road at Baylor. So Baylor is a team that I've recently become high on as not being a contender to win a national championship, but possibly being a playoff team, because now all you have to do is win your conference and you're going to the college football playoff. I think Baylor's got a better offense actually than Arizona State does. I think they've got the kind of offense that can give Arizona State problems. They've got a quarterback coming back that put up even bigger passing numbers than Sam Levitt did last year. And they don't have a wide receiver like Jordan Tyson, but they've got a better wide receiver room than Arizona State does. I think they can give Arizona State secondary problems. And Baylor's got the offensive line and running backs to where I think they can run some on Arizona State's a really good front seven. And I do think Arizona State's defense is better than Baylor's is. But with this game being at Baylor, that was just enough for me to pick Baylor to win this game. In a very close one. So now TCU, so TCU as the quarterback and wide receivers, where I think that they can give Arizona State secondary a lot of problems too. But TCU does not have the offensive line or running backs to be able to run the football at all, I don't think, on Arizona State. And TCU's defense, while they do return some great playmakers. It's not as good as Arizona State's, I don't think. I think Arizona State does get this win in a pretty close game. So now on the road at Utah. So I had a hard time picking this game. I was actually going to pick Utah because the game is at Utah. But Utah's offensive line, I do think can handle Arizona State's defensive line. And now that Utah has a dual threat quarterback, I think they can score more than they did last year in this game. But Utah's wide receiver room is still not great. And Arizona State's offensive line last year dominated Utah's defensive line. I remember watching that game, and Utah does lose some good players on their defensive line. So I think this one will be very close, but I'm going to go with Arizona State to get the win. So now Texas Tech, another team that I've recently become very high on. I think this might finally be their year. So at Texas Tech, you have to remember that even though Arizona State is the favorite to win the Big 12 this year, and the game is at Arizona State, Texas Tech beat Arizona State last year with Cameron Scadaboo, and Texas Tech has upgraded their roster a lot from last year, and now Arizona State does not have Cameron Scadaboo. And Texas Tech's defensive line, I actually think, is even better than Arizona State's. And I think Texas Tech's front seven can slow down Arizona State's run game. And Texas Tech has a quarterback that put up even bigger numbers than Levitt did through the air, and they've got a better wide receiver room than Arizona State does. I think they can give Arizona State's that secondary problems. So I'm actually going to go with Texas Tech to win this game in a close one. So now Houston. So I think Houston's passing game is going to be much better than last year with Connor Wayman coming in at quarterback from Texas A&M. But Houston, I don't think is going to be able to handle Arizona State at the line of a scrimmage. I think Arizona State's going to have a big advantage there. I don't think Houston's going to be able to run the football much in this game, and I think Arizona State's defense is much better. So I think Arizona State wins this one fairly easily. And now on the road at Iowa State. So Iowa State has the offensive line and running backs to where I think they can run the football some in this game. Now, I like Arizona State's defense better than Iowa State's, and Iowa State doesn't have a wide receiver anywhere close to as good as Jordan Tyson. But Iowa State's quarterback, I actually think, is better than Arizona State's, and Arizona State, I do think, is a little bit better of a team than Iowa State, but with the game being at Iowa State, that's just enough for me to go with Iowa State to get this win in a really close game. So at this point, Arizona State will be out of the Big 12 championship and the college football playoff. But now they play West Virginia, a team that, unlike Arizona State, is very inexperienced, and they have a new coach this year, and I think this is going to be a rebuild year for them. I think Arizona State wins this one by at least a couple of scores. And now on the road at Colorado, a team that in Deion Sanders' first 2 years has had no run game at all. They've been the worst rushing team in the country both years. And with Arizona State having a very good run defense, there's a good chance Colorado won't run for a yard in this game. And Colorado won't have the quarterback and wide receivers to pick apart a secondary like they did last year. And Colorado's defense is not going to be very good, I don't think. I think Arizona State will put up a lot of points in this game and win pretty easily. So now Arizona. So other than this game being a rivalry, there is no reason for me to pick Arizona to beat Arizona State. Arizona State has a much bigger uh, advantage at the line of scrimmage with Arizona, and they've got a much better defense, and I think they're a much better coach team than Arizona is. I think Arizona State wins this one pretty easily. So my prediction for Arizona State is 9-3 overall and 6-3 in the conference. Arizona State is a team that I think is going to be good again and could possibly make it back to the Big 12 championship. But with them losing a player like Scadaboo, that I don't think they can replace because they don't recruit very well. And I've only seen them, have a year like they did last year one time. I just couldn't quite pick them to repeat. But that will be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon.